The non-conference slate is over. The Big Ten schedule starts up. This is what counts. This is where the road gets a lot steeper. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, they hit the quarter pole, had their scare initially, but boy, they look like they got some momentum right now.
Well, thanks to Aaron's, the three of us are going to sit here Saturday and Sunday and watch every game. The Blue-White Tailgate is next. Great to have you with us on the Blue-White Tailgate. Steve, Jay, Todd, Josh coming up in just a few minutes. Penn State comes out, did what they had to do last week against Kent State. I mean, they went out, Todd took it right to them.
If you say 9 touchdowns is what they have to do against Kent State, absolutely. This team doesn't settle for field goals, do they? I mean, they like to finish off drives, and they've done a really good job sticking in the end zone for sure.
No question, and they did exactly what they needed to do in that game. Get that thing in control. Get some younger players some experience, build for the rest of the season, because you know when you get in the Big Ten and it starts to get physical and you get guys hurt, it's going to be nice to have that experience.
And for James Franklin, teaching moments in victory.
There's tremendous growth that needs to happen from this game, and we shouldn't have to go through a situation where we have a setback or suffer a loss, because the reality is the mistakes are there. Whether you win or lose, and what's going to allow you to keep winning is getting those things corrected.
It is much better, Jay, isn't it? Teaching in victory.
Well, it's harder to get their attention sometimes because they're convinced they're a little better than they think they are. But it's good to look. It doesn't matter how well you play. Nobody's played a perfect game that I've seen, so you can find those things. And you know those things. If you make those mistakes against some different teams, are going to be different results.
Yeah, I mean that's the message to kids. You know, you've won by 53 points, but here's the evidence right here. You go in the film room, which we'll go later, but you go and you see it on tape. And there are mistakes that are made out there. I mean, some of the penalties, some of the, some of the things that are still happening that they're going to have to clean up as they get into the Big Ten schedule.
All right, time now for the PSECU update. Josh Sperber. Josh, what do you have?
Welcome back to the Update Desk, sponsored by PSECU. This week, Penn State is back in the top 10, tied with Washington for the 10 spot in the AP poll and an outright 9th in the coaches poll. They're joined by 4 other Big Ten teams in the top 25, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Michigan State. And there's more to be excited about than just Penn State's rankings. We've seen 15 true freshmen play in the non-conference schedule, and all of them have made an impact so far. We have Micah Parsons on the defensive side of the ball. He's just been all over the field and becoming a key part of that linebacking core. Surly staying true to his #1 ranking out of the state of Pennsylvania in recruiting last season. On offense, we'll talk about Ricky Slade a little more later in the broadcast, and you saw Daniel George, the true freshman wide receiver, on the receiving end of the longest pass play in Penn State history, a 95-yard catch from Sean Clifford in the 4th quarter. On special teams, 2 of Penn State's most important legs are true freshmen. Rafael Cheka has put 10 of 24 kickoffs into the end zone, and Jake Pinniger is perfect, 22 for 22 on extra points. So a lot to be excited about for this Penn State team heading into Big Ten play. Guys, back to you.
Well, Josh, you referenced Big Ten play, so let's take a look at the numbers of Penn State in Big Ten openers over the years. 25 of them so far. What's interesting is that 17 to 25 have started out on the road.
So it wasn't just our perception. We really were on the road all the time for those games.
All the time.
A couple of them were Wisconsin, I remember.
Right. And if they hadn't had Rutgers at home one year because of a previously scheduled game, that wouldn't have been at home either.
Absolutely.
It's interesting how that's been played out. All right. Let's get to a couple things. I mean, the intensity of a Big Ten game. I remember when Penn State transitioned to the conference, that was one of the things they said right away. You'll find the intensity every game is big time, and that's what we've found out over the years.
Oh, no question about it. And especially when Penn State first got in, it was, we'll show the new guys who the boss is. And then, 94 went 12, Penn State went 12-0, and that ended that pretty quickly. But there is, when you look across this conference, there are a number of programs that have great traditions, proud fan bases, and it matters. It matters to those places.
Well, look, and there's no layups. I mean, you may look at the schedule, and a fan may look at it, and we could say, oh, well, of course they're going to win at Indiana, or they're going to do this. You know, look, if you don't come to play, I mean, 4 quarters, you can't get away with 2.5 quarters of good play. You're going to lose the game if you don't get at the
That's exactly what Nick Scott feels. He feels that you have to go win, and you have to take it to them.
Right. I would say the biggest thing about conference games is even more so than out-of-conference games, you can't overlook your opponent at all. You know, if you're in this conference, you know, you bring your A game every game, and you really can't take any play off or a quarter off or anything like that because it'll come back to bite you.
Well, this is the next step in all of this. All right, we've talked about all the steps that take place. Conference play is the next step. And so that's what they have coming up on the horizon. All right, we'll take a look at the Nittany Lion offense as we continue with more after this. All right, let's take a look at the Penn State offense. 53 points a game is not bad. I mean, you can live with that, can't you?
I hope you can win 3 games, averaging all 3 games if you average 53 points a game. If you can't, then you got some bigger problems.
Yeah. I thought what Josh said in the first segment, 22 of 22 extra points already.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. 3 games, 22 extra points, already.
All right, let's get to our drive of the game. Drive of the game was at the end of the first half, but it also entailed a critical decision by James Franklin. I mean, here are the plays. We'll look at the plays. But when you have a great returner like KJ Hamler, instead of taking the penalty on the kick that went out of bounds, he had them re-kick the ball, guys. And they gained 22 yards out of that.
Right. I mean, it's all about field position. And I think this is where Coach Franklin's really made some great adjustments in his time at Penn State so far, as with game management, with clock management, those types of things. He understands and evaluates his own guys. And who wouldn't want to get the ball into the hands of some of your playmakers and see if you can make a big play? It's happened a couple times. The kickoff return at the end of the App State game was huge, was a big factor, and could be one of the bigger plays of the season if it plays out.
Right, exactly. And then that kick return set up the drive that you just watched, and it was critical. It made it 28-10 at that point. It really, and the reason we picked it was that the game is over at that point. All right, time now for our Blaze Alexander Offensive Player of the Week. Trace McSorley is going to be the guy that will get the honor. He became the second quarterback in Penn State history to go over 1,000 career yards. It's also a day, Jay, where he accounted for 5 touchdowns.
That's not a bad day. I've only seen one guy do better than that. That was Mike Robinson out at Illinois in 05, and he had 6 touchdowns with. So that's a pretty significant performance by him. I will say, you know, it could have even been better. They make a couple of big catches for him. He put the ball in some really good spots, and they didn't come up with the catches, but they'll get that ironed out.
Yeah, best part of the day was probably watching him be able to sit out the fourth quarter, too.
Take
care of business, right?
And get the fourth quarter, like, if he's out there, I'm going down and taking him out. He better be healthy for the games that matter. This one is in hand.
Absolutely, and it's just to watch him, just a pleasure. I mean, he really spoils you. I mean, the staff understands that as well. His decision-making is just... It's just elite decision maker.
Well, James Franklin does admit he is a pleasure to coach.
You're a young quarterback out there, watch Trace McSorley. The guy's been winning since he was in diapers. That's all he does is win. And it's because of all those things that he doesn't get enough credit for. It's how he is as a teammate. It's how he supports the guys. It's how he is when they make mistakes. It's how he is when they make big plays. And when he comes in here, he's always giving credit to the O-line and the receivers and the running backs. The guy is a model in terms of how you conduct yourself at the most critical position in all of sports.
No question about that. And the numbers that Penn State's putting up are a direct result of many of the things that he puts into play. You can see what they've done numerically. They've been able to crank out great numbers. Jay, I feel like it comes into play maybe more in the red zone than anywhere else, but when you had Darryl Clark and you had Michael Robinson, now a Trace McSorley type of player, what does that do in the red zone? Because now you've got to account for him.
You have to count from the run game, which is the most important thing. The team, you know, you look at the teams that struggle in the red zone, a lot of them have traditional drop back quarterbacks. They can come bring 7, 8 guys and you're one back, and he's got to get it out of there. But we did some research on McSorley, and he was 22-0 in first grade in kickball at recess. So he really is a winner. I mean, that diapers comment probably is not an exaggeration.
That's right. Put the crack staff research team on some of the numbers for Trace. And
we are joking, by the way. We didn't really go research that.
Look, I mean, when you have to defend all 11 guys on offense all the way through to the goal line, it puts the pressure on the defense. And you see, I mean, you can even sense it at this point. We've seen Trace McSorley enough where you can sense he's going to keep this ball.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the defense doesn't know that. They, they still don't. Yep. They still have to take a guess. They have to figure out one way or the other. Still have to cover it.
All right, through the non-conference, something that has played out so far that we thought might happen with a veteran offensive line and some really good running backs, they're running the ball. So, Josh, how well are they running the football?
Well, guys, this Penn State offense has been rolling so far this season, putting up more and more points every game. And a big part of that is the Nittany Lion rush attack. We've seen over 200 yards and increased rush output every single game, including a 297-yard performance against Kent State last week. Now let's take a closer look at some of these running backs for Penn State. You have Miles Sanders, who's really been the feature back, very efficient, averaging over 6 yards a carry this season. Mark Allen, the senior leader, has been able to get those hard yards, and he's punched it in each of the past 2 games. Then there's the freshman phenom Ricky Slade, who showed off his versatility, getting those tough yards, and also showing off his speed, as we saw from a 27-yard rush where he shot through everyone en route to his debut score against Appalachian State. Mark Allen gives a lot of credit to Penn State's O-line for this team's success.
Coach Limebrower does a great job with his tactics, helping those guys out, learn the system as much. They're playing extremely fast out there, clearing holes up for me, Miles, JT, Ricky Slade, the entire running back room, Journey Brown. And we're just doing what running backs have to do, take advantage of our reps, going out there and falling behind those big guys.
This is a great rush attack for the Nittany Lions, and it's something that will certainly be relied upon heavily as we head into Big Ten play. Guys, back to you.
You know, Josh, there's one other element that goes with that. That's the tight ends, Jonathan Holland, Danny Dalton. But there's also been the addition of the true freshman, Pat Fryermuth, not only catching the ball, but, I mean, this is the additional blocker up front with these guys.
Well, if they want the playing time, they're going to have to get the job done up front. And there's so much competition at the tight end position, and Fryermuth has really been a blessing to him as far as being able to make himself available in the passing game as well. But it starts right at the line. You got to be part of what's going on. That happens with the running backs too. You've got to be able to pass protect. You got to be able to block. And that's what's going to keep him on the field if he's able to do that, Jay.
No question. And the thing about it, as well as they've run the ball, they're going to play some defensive lines that are a little bit better than Kent State's.
No question.
And so that's going to really has to, a couple of holding calls in that game that were ill-timed on a couple passes, but that offensive line, we're going to know how good they are in a couple weeks.
Well, a setup to any play that Penn State seems to have these days emanates from special teams, whether it's DeAndre Tompkins or KJ Hamler. And James Franklin likes the setup he's getting from his special teams.
You got an explosive guy as a kickoff returner and a punt returner. It has an effect that all the other 10 guys play better because they know if they can hold their block a second longer, this guy can take it to the house. So that energy, that positive energy that happens back there with that returner, it feeds into everybody.
And that also feeds into short fields. Short fields critical to knocking it home.
Yeah, he made that one of the things he wanted to take care of when he came to Penn State, and they certainly have with special teams.
They put a lot of time into it. Now, we're going to put a lot of time into looking at the Penn State defense. We'll do that as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this. I know a lot of you are very anxious to get to the film room. You're going to have to endure this segment to get there. All right, so let's get to it. The Penn State defense. Let's look at the numbers the last 6 quarters. Last 6 quarters, they have put up some impressive numbers, and this is what you need to do. They really have only had one bad quarter, one mediocre quarter. The last quarter against Appalachian State and maybe the first quarter against Pitt. That's been pretty much it.
Well, yeah, they're getting better, and you can, obviously they're going to play some more explosive teams. but what they've done, what they've had to do against the teams they've played. But I think there's some more things that have to be learned. You look at some of the linebacker play; they got to be in better positions against the teams that have the speed to make big plays.
No doubt. They got a pretty decent test with Woody Barrett having a mobile quarterback back there. I mean, that guy's he's a fire plug. He could knock you over, and they were looking to run and make that part of what they want to do. Obviously, Ohio State does that. Some other teams do that as well. So I thought they were pretty disciplined with what they were doing with Barrett. They're tackling better as it goes on, and all the coaching staff mentioned this is going to get better. And we talked about that because you can't do a whole lot of that in the preseason or as much as you want to. So there is improvement, no doubt, but we'll find out quickly how much.
Blaise Alexander Defensive Player of the Week. We were just referencing linebacker play. So is our Blaise Alexander Defensive Player of the Week. We do go to a linebacker, and that's Cam Brown. 7 tackles, couple for losses. Now, he did make a play deep downfield where we were praising it on the air. Found out later Brent Pry told me he was in the wrong spot. because Cam told us that in the postgame show. He says, well, they weren't very happy with me on that play.
Hey, if you're going to be in the wrong spot, go full speed and get to the ball. So, cover it up. But I think he played well. And you look at this, and they've rotated a lot of linebackers in. Yeah. So nobody's going to have the big tackle numbers everybody wants to see because they're playing half a game, or and when you get ahead and you're taking guys out, that impacts it. But they're going to get some real good tests in this Big Ten because there's some really good offensive football teams.
Part of what I like about Cam Brown, Jay, is the unique length that he has and just the unique physical aspects that he brings to a game. And you can do some unique things with a linebacker like that, can't you?
Yeah, and I appreciate his honesty in telling Steve he was in the wrong place. You got to love that. I mean, you have to love, I made a great play, but I wasn't where I was supposed to be. So, those are the type, I mean, we laugh about it, but that's a mark of how accountable he feels towards his assignments, that he's understands, I made a play, but I wasn't supposed to be there, and I'll be better in the future.
Yeah, now the one area, the Penn State had been the least penalized team in FBS through 2 games, 6 total for 55 yards. But they had 9 penalties in this game, several on defense, and that wasn't exactly making James Franklin happy.
You got to eliminate the pre-snap penalties. Guys, think about this. We had 1 penalty that we jumped off sides on 3rd down, which created a 1st down. Then we came back, did it again. As a smart football team, they took a shot on that play, scored a touchdown. So 2 penalties, 1 equaled a 1st down, another one equaled a touchdown for them.
And you have to be smart. I mean, now you're getting into the meat of the schedule. You got to be smart about, and you got to do it the way they did the first 2 games. 6 total for 55 yards. They were number 1 in the nation at that point. Pass rush. Do we have to evaluate pass rush differently in this era of mobile quarterbacks?
I would say so. I mean, it's tough to chase some of these guys down. And is anybody ever really happy with your pass rush? I mean, you always want to see more and more pressure that's coming on. And it's complementary with the secondary, too.
Yeah.
I mean, as the secondary gets better, as they get a little bit more experience, they can lock down the receivers a little bit more. That gives you that extra half second, that extra second to get to the quarterback. So, absolutely. I mean, defense is tough in the modern age. I mean, teams are, look, if you look at Penn State's offense, if the defense can keep the opponent to under 30, under 25, chances are you're going to win the game.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, and that means also making sure, we talked about how Penn State ran the football. Josh did that great package on that. But you have to stop it as well. And that Sharif Miller likes the job they're doing against the run.
Everybody in their gaps, everybody being gap accountable. That's the main thing. Like last week, it was some guys that was out of their gaps. You feel me? Like, so when we get in the Big Ten play, we got a lot of great running backs in the Big Ten. And like when you play against them, you gotta make sure you're in the gap because they can go for a long run or a touchdown.
And a guy that has a lot of physical gifts that I think can really help them out here is Koa Farmer. What do you guys think about Koa's play?
Well, I mean, I think he's, you talked about the rotation in the linebacker. You don't see him involved enough at the end of the play when he's out there. So, but he's got the speed and he's got unique characteristics that he has that he needs to utilize when he's out there.
All right, coming up, we'll go to the film room. And when we go to the film room, they're going to break down Casablanca. No, just kidding. We'll take a look at that as we continue after this.
We are back on the Blue White Tailgate. We have moved things into the film room. It's brought to you by Beer Belly's Beverage, and it's going to be a little less film, a little bit more graphic intensive, as the discussion today is about the Big Ten East. We got 9 conference games every year. You got to play everybody in the Big Ten East, and so Jay took a look at the opponents that are coming up in the Big Ten East, and that's where we get things started in order as we go through the schedule.
Absolutely, and it's going to get real steep. I mean, there are no Kent States in this group anymore. But let's talk about Ohio State first, because obviously that's the first Big Ten East game that we play. Now, they've done a really good job. Their turnover margin is really good. The total offense is off the charts. The thing that's really surprising about them is 348 yards a game passing. Now, the key for them the rest of the year and against Penn State will be, how does their quarterback play when he comes in here, their defensive line, and they, like Penn State, have had some wide-ups, dropped some key balls, or Haskins would have had an even better time against TCU.
Well, Haskins is unbelievable. I mean, we saw brief spells of him last year, and in fact, some people, when J.T. Barrett was struggling, they were like, hey, just get the Haskins kid in there. They wanted to see him even earlier. I think everybody there in Columbus knew how special this kid was.
Yeah, his decision-making and the way that ball comes out so quickly is going to make people, it's going to be tough for people to get to him, and Penn State's going to have to do some things to get to him, hold some receivers up, but that'll be obviously a tough challenge. Next one is from the Big Ten East. We'll talk about Michigan State. Michigan State, they've only, they're only 2 games in. They've been a little disappointing with that loss at Arizona State, but they really have a really good wide receiver core. Felton Davis is the big one that Penn Staters remember, number 18, catches things with his hands really well. He opens everything up for everybody else. The quarterback, Lewerke, is solid. You look at their run defense number, really, really good. Surprising stat is that their 300 yards per game pass defense they're allowing, and total defense is 10th in the Big Ten. The key for them, can they run the ball against Penn State, and can Penn State stop them? And that middle linebacker, Joe Bacci, who I still think is one of the great names in college. Joe Bacci, as an Italian. I don't know if he's Italian. It's not spelled like the
Just sounds
game,
that way,
but
right?
I love the name. He's a real bowling ball there in the middle.
Absolutely. Couldn't resist that one. But when you think of Michigan State, you think of 2 things. The secondary, which, surprising statistic there, and you think of the run game. They always got a big back to pound on you as it goes through. Lewerke's a little uneven right now, so we don't see them till mid-October, so we'll see if they've gotten their kind of issues straightened out.
Knowing them, they will.
Yeah, right.
And the next Big Ten East team everyone's talking about is Michigan. Michigan is a complete mystery still at this point. They played Notre Dame. They had a chance to win it at the end. They didn't play very well against them. Notre Dame, so it's Notre Dame, but Notre Dame hasn't been very good. Now, their strengths, pass defense, they've been very good. Their defensive line is very active up front. Their pass efficiency, the thing that's surprising for them is they're scoring 37 points a game. They're getting great special teams play. Their passing efficiency is second to Big Ten. Their key for them is going to be how well their quarterback plays. I don't see a great running back or a great wideout and field position, and they've done a great job in their return game. They're actually on par with Penn State in some of those numbers.
Yeah, I think mystery is a good way to describe it. An enigma wrapped in a riddle, whatever. I mean, I think that's the way Jim Harbaugh likes to be. And you mentioned Shea Patterson. I don't know how the staff and the play calling fits his game too. So we're going to see if that evolves with the Wolverines. Don't have to see them for quite a while, but you got to go to Ann Arbor for that one.
Yep.
Okay, next one.
Then let's talk about some of the big games that we cross over with. Talk about Iowa first. Defensively, been very, very good. 8 points a game, 209 yards a game. Those are big, big numbers. I don't care who you play. And that Iowa State win they had that everybody said, oh, it was close, looks pretty good when you look at how Iowa State played against Oklahoma. The surprising stat is 167 yards a game passing. Normally, people have been able to throw the ball and attack them. And Nate Stanley's a 63% completion guy, which they're a downfield passing team. That's a good number for a team like that. The key for them, they've got to get their run game going, and if Penn State can keep them from running and forcing the passing, they'll be in good shape. And again, they're another one of those teams that likes to play field position. They've got statistically the best punter in the league, I believe. So that's going to be a challenge.
Hawkeyes always looking to minimize mistakes, always looking to play assignment football. You don't always look at that team and say there's athletes all over the field. Penn State will have the most athletic team when they play the Hawkeyes.
Yep.
Will they have more points on the scoreboard at the end of it, though?
Correct.
If they can, they play disciplined enough. Okay.
And along that line of ball control, let's go to the Badgers because everybody knows they're coming into town eventually. Physical run game obviously is a strength for them. Their time of possession, 35 minutes. And when you play a team like Penn State and you keep Trace McSorley on the sidelines for 35 minutes, it helps you. Surprising stat, their pass defense is 146 yards per game. Usually that's something you can attack them on. The key is going to be Penn State keeping them from running the football, turnovers, and obviously the red zone.
That loss to BYU is just it's really hard to fathom. A lot of people were really high on Wisconsin. A couple of their offensive linemen, All-American, preseason All-Americans, first team. That's usually the recipe to take down teams like BYU. But the loss is on the schedule. They got to go to Iowa. Tough place to play. We'll see if the Badgers where they're at when they come here later in the season.
Let's talk about the other 3 Big Ten games down the stretch from the Big Ten East. Indiana, that's a team, don't sleep on them. They're putting up really good numbers. They're surprisingly really good on pass defense. Maryland, as you look at them, which Maryland team is going to show up? Is it going to be a team that beat Texas, or is it going to be a team that lost to Temple by 21? Surprising stat for them, third down defense. They're leading the conference at allowing only 28%. And then you look at Rutgers, their average rank in the Big Ten and 18 key categories is 12th out of 14 teams. They're -9 turnover margins. If they don't change that, it's going to be an ugly day for them.
I applaud you for going 18 key statistics deep.
I was trying to find something about it. But, Chris Ash is a good guy. I think it's just going to take them some time.
Yeah, 1 step forward, maybe 2 steps back right now for this year. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so there's your look at the Big Ten East and the schedule coming up. We got more coming up here on the Blue White Tailgate after this.
Let's play a little true or false, guys. Let's have a little fun here during the course of the segment.
What are you setting us up for here, Steve?
Look,
true or false, at least you got a 50-50 shot. I'll take that. If we give all A, B, C, A and C, A and B, all of the above, they'll give us those questions.
Welcome to the Blue White Tailgate dartboard. All right, so here we go. All right, number 1, Micah Parsons, when it's all said and done in 2018, will be Penn State's leading tackler, Todd Sadowski.
I will say false, but he's going to be close. He will be very close.
I'm going to say false, too, because there's a lot of good tacklers on this team.
All right. Next up, Ricky Ronnie's offense will end up being more explosive than Joe Moorhead statistically.
I will say false, because I think they're going to play some better defenses coming down the road, and it's going to be close. I'm not saying they're younger.
Wow, they're off to a good start, aren't they? I mean, the numbers that they've put up so far are pretty impressive. You know, the Kent State 63 is going to be sitting there. If you broke it down, conference and non-con, pretty close. They're definitely off to a good start. But I will, in long-winded way, say false by the end of the year.
You know, each team's different, all right. And do they maximize what they can get out of this? That to me is the key. I mean, to me, it's how you maximize it. It doesn't really matter what somebody else did in the past.
And I would go further and say it's not even so much Ricky Ronnie versus Joe Moorhead.
Exactly.
You're missing 26.
Yeah.
Who made some things happen.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Speaking of 26, a lot of people had him in the Heisman conversation last year. So is Trace McSorley, when it's all said and done, a Heisman finalist?
Oh, gonna go.
Oh yeah,
I'm ditching that right to you.
It's because you wore the green shirt, man.
I think true. I think a finalist. I don't necessarily think he's going to win it, but I think they just keep winning. That's the main thing for Trace, is just to keep winning. The statistics aren't going to be gaudy, and usually the winner has some gaudy statistics and have done some things that are really, really extra special. If he can just keep guiding this team to victories and victories and victories, people will eventually appreciate what he brings to the field, and I think he can do that.
I'm going to say it'll be true if they beat Ohio State. I think that's going to be the key. You don't win this trophy against Kent State, and no disrespect, or against Rutgers, but when you have the big stage, which he will have against Ohio State, you win that game, you're in the conversation. Mike Robinson was a top 5 in the Heisman.
Yeah.
We won those games, and I think that's going to be the key.
Okay, so really, pretty much that dovetails into the next question about whether Penn State will win 11 games. I think that probably what you just said fits.
11, does that include bowl games or not? The optimist in me and the Penn Stater in me will say yes. The person that's a little bit more realistic probably says no in the regular season, because I think when you look at Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and even in Indiana on the road can be tricky. You have to win. You got to win all 4 of those 5, and I don't know if that's a tall order for a young team. But
can I answer it the way Jay answered the last one? If they beat Ohio State, they'll get 11 wins. I mean, really, to me, that's really, if they beat Ohio State, I think they'll get to 11 wins. I felt at the beginning of the year this was probably a 10-2 season because of the strength of schedule, even though a lot of them were at home. I don't know how strong some of these other teams are. They're certainly falling in the rankings. Not that the rankings mean anything.
Right.
It's still very early.
Sure.
But I'll just say if they beat Ohio State, they'll get to 11 wins.
Well, one of those that stumbled was Wisconsin losing at home to BYU. So will Wisconsin not win the Big Ten West? True or false?
I think true. I think they're still very good defensively. They got the best running attack out there.
True, they will win it?
They will win it,
Okay.
yeah, true, yeah. Oh, I may have misheard that question. But, yeah, I think they still do. I think, Minnesota's obviously made improvements. Iowa, you can't discount them. It's going to be either Iowa or Wisconsin.
Well, Iowa and Wisconsin seem to switch back and forth with that cake schedule, and Iowa's got it this year after Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's going to need to win this game. I think Wisconsin will still do enough. I don't think Iowa's good enough to win the West.
Alabama will not play in the SEC title game, but going 6-6 will make the playoff.
I think Alabama's going to play in the SEC title game, and here's why: because both Auburn and LSU play Georgia in crossover games. Alabama does not, and that's the best team in that other division.
I don't care who the other teams play. To tell you the truth, I think
Yeah,
Bama's in it anyway. I mean, you're right about that, but this team seems pretty special.
True or false, Pitt will be on the 2026 schedule?
Who's 2026 schedule? Penn State?
Penn State. Look, I
Be
can
more
already give-
specific,
hey,
Steve.
heck with this. I'll give you the answer. The answer is no.
They will. No, false. I think that they're going to need a home-and-home series, and we don't really have that available. So
I mean, to go along with your cruise, the ship has sailed.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, Steve, I'll go with you, right? You got the inside info on that one, probably, that it's not showing up on the schedule.
Dwayne Haskins, true or false, will be the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year.
Based on what I've seen right now and the numbers he's putting up, if he continues to play that way, I would say probably true.
I would say true. I think this is a good question to ponder at this point. That guy is really, really impressive. And, look, if he really stumbles at Beaver Stadium, that's a tough environment to play in. That might cost him. I just think that offense is so explosive. They're going to put up some huge numbers after the Penn State game.
Well, next Saturday game could play a role in that. We'll see.
No
All right. And then last, but absolutely not least, Todd and Steve will be your special guests on the Paterno family cruise to the Bahamas.
True, because we're going to pull John Grant out of retirement to broadcast the Penn State basketball games in the Big Ten tourney. And by the way, I see Penn State going deep in that tournament. I am high on this Penn State basketball team, but Todd wants to go. We'll take him.
Love it. Huh? I love the mystery question. You just threw right in there.
I'm just hoping I get to be a mystery
Well,
guest.
see, he left me out because he thinks I'm going to be in Chicago for a long run.
I absolutely
and
think so.
And I think he's right. I think I've watched them practice several times.
Looking good, huh?
The kids they brought in can play. Dredd, Bolden, Jones, they can play.
We just got to make sure that head coach Pat Chambers has some energy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. When he led the stadium.
One of the things he lacks is not energy. He doesn't lack much.
No, and you know what? I mean, he's building it for the long haul.
No question.
I mean,
I think he's
finally.
I think he's the piece, and I'm really happy about it. That'll be good. True or false? Penn State will make the NCAA tournament. True.
All right, true. Sounds good. So
You
you're
heard it
booking your
first.
reservations for the Windy City. I'm booking mine
Florida and
for the
Bahamas.
wind and the
Wind and the-
sunshine.
What bothered me is before the segment you brought in suntan lotion. I was like, great. I had nothing. All right, coming up, Thomas Frank-Carr and Josh Sperber will sit down and break down the numbers as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this.
Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate, and now we have Shop Talk, presented by Ace Hardware of State College. I'm joined right here by Thomas Frank-Carr, ESPN Radio. Thomas, welcome back to the studio.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. We're glad to have you. So we're going to talk some Penn State football. There's been a lot of good things going on this season. In the non-conference schedule, what have you seen on the positive side from this Penn State team so far?
Well, I think you can't go wrong with scoring over 45 points a game. Let's start there. That's a pretty good spot. They've gotten better at tackling as well. I think that's one thing starting out the season. There's a lot of talk about how much can you tackle during training camp. They have gotten progressively better every single week, and I think last week was their best week of tackling. We'll have to see if that continues in the Big Ten schedule because a lot of those things sometimes you can regress once you get comfortable. The other thing is I think Trace McSorley has been outstanding. He's gotten better every single game, and that's something that you can't normally say about a fifth-year senior. Last week he had an adjusted completion percentage of 72%, which is one of his better games of the year. Obviously the penalties and the took back a couple touchdowns off the board, but I thought he's been fantastic so far, and I've seen a lot of good things in his development from last year to this year.
Well, absolutely. When you have a guy who's as talented as he is, it's good to see that he continues to improve. But are there any other guys that have really stood out to you so far, at least in the early stages of the season for Penn State?
I've always liked Ryan Bates. I think he's a really talented pass protector, and he's continued to hold that edge. But the progression along the offensive line has gotten better, and Michael Mennett, once he got his sea legs under him, has been a better center as far as holding pocket depth. So those two guys, but the offensive line in general, I think, has played better and is really becoming everything that we thought they could be in the preseason and during the summer.
Well, they came into the season ranked as one of the better offensive lines in college football. For the most part, they certainly seem to be holding their own there. But now we're heading into Big Ten play. Different animal. I mean, what do you expect from Penn State? What do they need to do to really keep holding their own like they have so far this season?
Defensively, they need to get better. Obviously, they need to continue to progress on that side of the ball. They've got a lot of young talent on that side. Defensively, on the interior, I asked James Franklin, how do you gauge your pass rush this year so far? Because they faced a couple of mobile quarterbacks, some guys who don't have that traditional sense of you can attack them that same way. He said defensively on the interior, they need to get better at the pass rush, and then again at linebacker. Sometimes when they blitz, it's not effective because they allow themselves to be blocked. So I think if they can improve on the interior in general, the run stopping last week versus Kent State, that was not necessarily a good test of how good their run defense improved from week 2 to week 3. So I want to see that continue to improve and those defensive interior guys hold their attack and get upfield and attack in the running game, not just in the passing game.
Yeah, well, it's important to stop both sides of the ball, and I think, in the past 2 games you've seen Penn State do that very well. But we'll talk about more of the players now. I know you also do some work for Pro Football Focus, all right? Mm-hmm. So any of the guys on this team that you really think, obviously you talked about Trace McSorley, how well he's done and how he's continued to improve. As an NFL prospect, what do you see from Trace?
So I think there's 2 conversations, and this is kind of where we get obsessed with when we talk about college quarterbacks. Are they an NFL starter? Are they a guy who can lead a franchise? Because that's what everyone's looking for, and that's what the NFL is obsessed with, is finding that guy. The short answer is yes, I think he can play in the NFL, but I don't think he's an NFL starting quarterback. And I think that there's a big difference between the two because he has all of the mental characteristics, he has all of the technique characteristics that I look for in an NFL quarterback. It's just, we've disproved that height is an issue, but arm strength and size are still an important thing for a quarterback, and he just falls a little short in those categories. I've seen a better zip on the ball from him this year, so I think his arm talent has improved a little bit. It's to the point where I would say he can play in the NFL. I don't know if he's draftable in the middle rounds, maybe as a late round pick if you're looking for a character guy. But I think he can play in the NFL, have a 5-6 year career.
So certainly we've seen a lot from Trace McSorley this season. He's improving as a leader, and that's something important to do before the draft time. But there are a lot of other guys from Penn State that are ready to make that next step. Any other ones really stand out to you?
I would point out 2 to 3. I think Ryan Bates is a guy who I've really liked since his redshirt freshman year. When he was playing at guard, I thought he could be one of the more dominant guards in the Big Ten. Obviously, injuries and then a natural ability has kicked him out to left tackle. He might not have the length to play in the NFL, but I think that he's a really good mobility sort of pass protecting guard if he can kick back inside and hold up against bigger tackles in the NFL. And then Amani Oruwariye is a really good zone corner. I don't know if he has the feet to stay with some of the faster receivers. We saw App State take advantage of that once or twice. But as a physical zone corner who can go attack the ball, I think he's a very good prospect.
And he's certainly done well so far this year. Last question real quickly. Any of the more recent Penn State guys you see succeeding in the NFL that you really like so far?
I really like Chris Godwin's fit in that Tampa Bay offense. It really has opened up with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. I don't know if they took advantage of his skill the first year, but he, even on special teams last year, was really good. And then Saquon Barkley, 68 yards on one play, but it's kind of what we were seeing from him in college, where 2.8 yards per carry, and then all of a sudden he busts one off. He's a special player, but it's kind of that situation he's in.
He certainly has that ability. Coming up next, we'll be with the good, the bad, and the ugly on the Blue White Tailgate.
Well, it doesn't take us long to get out of the gate with the segment you all wait for every week. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Look at this. Was that ugly at the end? Yeah, really bad. Okay. Well, you get the good.
I get the good. Okay. Now, first of all, on principle, I am against the old turnover trinket stuff on the sidelines. Okay. I hate individual recognition in sports, in a team sport. You know, the guy that makes the pick, what about the defensive tackle that hit the quarterback? He should get something. But if you're going to do it, you go big. And my good is the Oregon State turnover chainsaw. I want to know if that fit into a 1-gallon clear plastic bag to get past stadium security. But they took Miami's turnover chain and said, we're going to do you one better and go the turnover chainsaw. I love it.
Sponsored by?
Husqvarna. I wrote a whole column about it on statecollege.com if you want to read it.
Oh, my
Had
gosh.
some fun with it.
Yeah, too funny, too creative. So the bad is, we've alluded to it, the Big Ten, slaughtered last weekend. Rutgers by Kansas and Maryland by Temple, but really in the Big Ten West, 2-5, the names of the juggernauts that knocked them off: Akron, South Florida, BYU, Missouri, and Troy. Bad.
Ugly. Arkansas punt coverage. North Texas guy. I didn't call a fair catch. It took off. And not only that, but the North Texas guys faked it to a point where they started to walk off the field, but they walked off the field to a point where they stopped and formed a wall.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Arkansas punt coverage. Hey, Duquesne's playing at Hawaii. I don't know who the athletic director is at Duquesne, but props.
That's awesome. I mean, you got to love that trip.
Yeah. That's like a basketball trip for you, huh? One of the.
Wait, you don't think I'm sitting in West Lafayette in February? I'm not thinking about the Maui Invitational.
There you go.
All right, here we go. Let's get to the picks. All right, so our picks for the week. All right, Jay, you get TCU and Texas.
I got to tell you, Texas was impressive Saturday night against USC. TCU in a loss was very impressive with their team speed. My heart wants me to pick Texas because I just love the Longhorns, love the burnt orange, but I think TCU has too much speed for them down there.
All right, I end up getting Iowa and Wisconsin. That game's going to be at Kinnick Stadium. This is all about who plays with the lead because both teams want to run the football. Believe it or not, I think Nathan Stanley probably is a better quarterback than I think Hornibrook is. I'm going to go with Iowa to win the game at home. So, Josh, you get Texas A&M and Alabama.
That blowout win against Ole Miss last week is just more proof why Alabama is the #1 team in the country. They're looking dominant on both sides of the ball, and no former Nick Saban assistant has ever beaten him as a head coach. I don't see Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies coming to Tuscaloosa and changing that. Todd, what do you got?
Well, I got Stanford and Oregon, and I've been staying up till 3 in the morning every Saturday to study the Pac-12 and make sure that I've got this really settled. I don't know what the Ducks have, to tell you the truth, for them to be ranked 20th quite yet. I'm not so sure I believe in them. Chip Kelly's not coaching them. I know that. I don't know if he's coaching UCLA yet. I don't know. They haven't won a game.
Ouch.
So, yeah, zing. Wow. So I'm going to go with Stanford. That's a team that usually travels well. You got a good rushing attack, and that hits the road. When you bring those offensive linemen and good, solid running backs, usually have some success on the road. I'll go with Stanford.
All right, so now let's get to our Aaron's keys to the Big Ten season coming up, because now Penn State's negotiated the non-conference and now into the Big Ten season. And I think the keys to the Big Ten season is just continue to grow a young football team. I mean, and they've played a lot of guys. But if you continue to grow them in such a way, I think they're going to have a chance to be a really good team when the thing's all said and done. What do you got, Jay?
I think pass rush. If they can get to the quarterback with 4 guys, that's going to open up, make life a lot easier for young linebackers in the secondary back there, because they're going to play some teams that have some speed at the skill positions. And if they're in a lot of one-on-ones and they're blitzing a lot and guys get loose, some guys got loose for Pitt and they ran them down, but they're going to play some teams that have guys that can outrun them.
I'm looking at special team success, guys. You got Blake Gillikin, who's an elite punter. Jake Pinniger's done a nice job. We're going to see if he gets under pressure with a field goal attempt. And then those return men. I mean, flipping field position with KJ Hamler and DeAndre Tompkins. Sometimes it's the little things that make the difference in a Big Ten schedule, and special teams is where you can win that game.
I just really liked the turnover chainsaw. I thought that was real. I thought in the end that's pretty good. You know, he did an entire column.
The question is it gassed up and ready to go? I mean, if he pulls the thing, are we going?
All right. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Blue White Tailgate.